I won't beat around the bush. I wanted to describe to you an epiphany I've had recently, encompassed by the phrase, "A test is a lesson for the teacher." And after much deliberation, I've decided the best way I can explain this is with a story, which is the word I chose because there's no way I can call this a parable without coming off as extremely pretentious. But anyway, without further ado, let's begin. Once at a time beyond our measure, there lived a girl whom, since her name's not of particular import, we'll just call the apprentice. She was the student of a powerful arcanist, who we'll simply call the master. When he'd initially agreed to train her in the mystic arts, one of the first things the master did was pull a Mr. Miyagi, loading his new apprentice with dull, menial tasks, such as mopping his floors, dusting the shelves, beating the rugs, and so forth. Whenever she would press him to start her actual magic lessons in earnest, he would respond with vague allegories, superficial histories on this or that famous wizard, or else simply slap her with another list of chores and say some variation of, "You'll learn in time." Well, as you can imagine, the apprentice was none too pleased by this. She had signed on to learn how to bend the powers of nature to her fancy, not to be some old wizard's maidservant. But what could she do? He was the master. He had all the power, all the knowledge. She was but his humble acolyte. But as it turned out, humble did not mean helpless or hapless. For you see, in all but literally handing her all his dirty laundry, the master had given her free rein over his abode, including his expansive library of arcane tomes and scrolls. So when she's not scrubbing, sweeping, polishing, or otherwise doing the master's errands for him, she devotes her every hour and iota of effort to stealing for herself the primeval power he refused to relinquish. Little did she know, until one evening when he caught her practicing a spell she could only have learned from one of his personally authored treatises, that this was, in fact, the master's plan all along. And after telling her so, she says indignantly, "So this was all a test?" To which the master calmly and plainly responds, "Life tests, I teach." The lesson here, the apprentice thinks, is that she needs to cultivate her own will, her own drive, to pave her own path towards power. A truly inspired and beneficent message on the part of her master, she thinks. But remember what I said at the beginning. Tests are lessons for the teacher. The good teacher tests, not to assert his own petty authority, but to gauge the student's strengths so as to know where to direct the focus of their tutelage. Or, should the student be in need of what the teacher does not have, to direct them on to a new source of wisdom. By saying that he does not test, the master has subtly indicated his true motivation. By presenting it as a test while insisting it is a lesson, he draws her to a false conclusion that he has her best interests in mind. By painting for her a picture of herself as the driving force of her own destiny, he masks the glaringly obvious fact that it was his will her efforts satisfy, that it is his own destiny that is of concern to the master, never his students'. And so, by saying that he does not test, but teach, which sounds like a benevolent offer of guidance, he is in reality saying that he will dictate her reality to her, all the while directing her focus solely inward, keeping her so distracted with her own infelt agenda that it never even occurs to her to pry any deeper into his. I realize after typing all this out that I'm probably not saying anything most of you don't already know, that seemingly altruistic acts very often belie more sinister motives, that narratives primarily exist for the benefit of the teller rather than the listener, and that all systems, institutions, and authorities ultimately exist to serve themselves, and will do so at the expense of whatever they claim it is their sworn duty to protect and serve so long as they're allowed to. Nevertheless, I think it is a concept worth repeating, if only for the sake of hopefully enacting some measure of Mithridatism, that is, inducing immunity via repeated instances of minor exposure. In any event, let me know your thoughts in the usual ways and in the usual places, and while you're there, consider leaving a like and subscribing for more bouts of esoteric musing. Check out my books if the above rant piqued your interest. Or if you've more spare cash than time, then possibly consider dropping a super thanks or super chat coin into my hat instead. And with all that being said, until next time, stay safe, stay sane, and remember, anyone selling you a dream is trying to put you to sleep. Peace be upon you.